What's up, guys? Tim here with Swamp Fox Pursuits, and it's been a while. I think it's actually been, maybe a month since the last time I uploaded. Life gets pretty busy, especially when you're in the military. So I apologize for that. I have gone on 2 more duck hunts since then with no luck. Also 2 more deer hunts, also with no luck. But next year, hopefully, our luck will change with the duck aspect. And that is in part due to some news for today. Now, what the camera was propped up on is my new boat. Yep, definitely only new to me, but nonetheless, it is what I think a pretty darn good deal. Now, you'll have to excuse the mess that is the rest of my garage. We're getting a pretty decent storm rolling through the East Coast right now, and being in South Carolina, we're down at like that bottom half where it's going to be mostly rain, but maybe some sleet or some, ice. So I wanted to get it inside, wanted to get it dried out, especially because the gentleman who had it before me pretty much only kept it outside and didn't really have a cover for it. So in this video, what I'm going to do is basically take you from the front all the way to the back and kind of go over everything that I'm planning to do with this boat. All right, starting up at the tongue, you'll notice that it is quite long. It's, if I was to guess, probably 2.5 feet, which, there's good reason to have a longer tongue.
What did he say?
I personally, want it to be able to fit in my garage. So the plan is at some point, to get somebody I work with to actually cut this right here and then turn this into one of those like swiveling hitch heads. So that way I can actually tuck it back and fit it straight on in my garage. Additionally, you'll notice that there are 2 wires that just aren't connected anymore on the 4-pin. So that should also be pretty easy to fix. I honestly might lop these wires off down here and, rewire this connector, because this connector also has seen better days. There's a decent amount of wear on it. So this trailer is actually in pretty darn good shape. This crank is actually only about 1.5 years old, so we should be good there. The safety rope, on the other hand, absolutely needs to get replaced. It is barely hanging on, and just pulling it, you can hear the strands breaking. These other guide rollers really probably just need some lubrication, but overall, it's a galvanized steel trailer. It's held up pretty well. I don't know if I've actually mentioned this yet, but it is a 2006 Alumacraft MV Tech Special, and it's got a Yamaha 50 horse on the back. Now, it also has oil injection, so I don't have to premix. I might end up changing that over just because, I've heard some horror stories about oil injection and it not being great. But yeah, overall, the trailer's in great shape. This spare tire is also in really good shape. All right, now to the bow. So at the bow, we have a Motor Guide 46-pound thrust trolling motor. We've got light and then a pretty grody 12-volt plug. And we've got the nav light up here. The one in the back seemed to give the guy some trouble, so I might either end up replacing the connection to it or just buying a new nav light. I'll probably try to replace the connection first, since those are typically cheaper. Coming a little bit more aft, we've got a point to put on one of these seats. These seats have seen better days, to say the least, and I'll talk more about that in the seat situation when we get to the cockpit. One of the downsides, personally, that I have with this boat that isn't really, make or break, but out of all of this front area, the only place you have storage is in here. And if I open it up, it's not massive. It goes probably another like 3 or 4 inches past, you know, the lid. I also want to replace the carpet because it's pretty dingy in there. Like I said before, there's decent storage on here for rods. There's this really cheap, well, I don't think it's cheap, but I mean, it is completely dry rotted. So these will probably come off. These nicer ones I'm definitely going to keep those here. It looks like this mounting system is the same one they have going up towards like the dash and console, which is great because this is going to be a really nice spot to mount any graphs that I end up getting for it. But these rod holders are definitely going to come out. So the console itself is in really good shape, actually. From what I could tell looking at it, there isn't any, you know, damage, and it actually is like pretty like thick and hefty. I don't know what material it's made out of. It feels almost like a composite, but there's no cracks, which is pretty darn good for a boat that's 20 years old. The windscreen has some scratches in it, but nothing like too crazy. I'll probably go to Alumacraft's website and see if they, you know, sell replacements eventually, but again, not really a priority for me. All right, so you can see I have the seats up right now. This bottom compartment, like I said before, the guy kept it outside without a cover, so it's pretty damp in there. Before we get to the seat situation, I'll just take you kind of around the cockpit really quick. Now, the wiring underneath works, but it isn't very neat, and that really bothers me. I don't like it, and I want to fix it. But everything else on the dash actually works, which is pretty impressive. The speedometer works, the voltmeter works, the RPM meter worked, but it didn't really look like it worked that well. So not really sure what that's about. There's this compass thing, but I mean, as you can see, it's pretty busted. I'm definitely gonna end up taking that off. And then this radio, he actually had 2 of them because he thought the old one was broken. So this one is brand new. I think he put it on like a couple months ago, but it's plugged in and working with these 2 speakers here and then the larger speaker up front. The steering is actually pretty decent, again, for how old the boat is. There are a couple points that you'll kind of hit where it gets a little caught up and then you have to kind of add more pressure to keep it turning, but really not that big of a deal. If it becomes more of a problem in the future, I'll address it. But for now, it should be fine. Everything with the throttle works, you know, as it should. I don't know if you guys can see here, but the trim is right here on the throttle. So if I go up with it, it goes up, down, it goes down. So that works. The only other kind of cosmetic / way of life, I guess you could say it, thing is that I want to fix is I want to take this panel out and then I want to take these switches out. Essentially, I want to take all this and add it onto an aux beam control panel that I'll probably mount right here because I'm getting rid of this thing and I'm getting rid of these switches. So I think it'd be a nice place for it to go. But from that switch, I'll be able to, you know, operate the nav lights, the bilge pump, the aerator, all that kind of jazz, and make it a little bit neater. All right, coming back to the seat situation. As you can see, driver's seat actually isn't in awful condition. However, it rained 2 days ago and they're still drenched. He does have the posts for both the back deck seat and the front deck seat. However, I don't really ever see myself using more than one of them. So I'll probably just completely ditch one of them and then, you know, buy a new pedestal and seat for that one. Talking about seats, I don't know if I'm going to get flack in the comments for this, but after about 45 minutes of research, turns out that Bass Pro, their seats are actually pretty decent. I would get like kind of the top of the line seats that they offer. I think they're called the Qualifier, if I'm not mistaken. But it looked like they had tiers of seats. And from what I could see, you know, I checked on bassboatseats.com and I'm trying to keep this build slash boat as budget as possible, which I understand is an oxymoron when it comes to boats. However, you're on a seat while you're getting to location, and then after that, you're kind of just piddling around. So I don't really think I need to go real bougie with seats. Not to mention the bassboatseat.com website didn't really say anything for these like John boat side console kind of fishing boats. I don't know if I would necessarily classify this as a bass boat. So I don't really know if any of the seats would fit, if it's a universal thing. I also briefly looked online at like eBay and on Facebook Marketplace. Didn't really see anything, that great on either of those sites. So if you guys have any suggestions for seats, whether it be, do the Bass Pro Shops, but don't get the highest quality one, all that kind of shit. If you have suggestions on where I could find seats, go ahead, put them down in the comments down below. If there's any suggestions you have, honestly, about what I should do, please put them in the description, because this is my first boat. I'm going to say boat. I've had canoes and kayaks and John boats, but I've never had, something like this before. I also really would like suggestions on graphs, because for now, I think I want a somewhat basic graph just to mount here to give me depth. Being in the low country of South Carolina, one of the things that always makes me nervous is hitting a stump or hitting some pretty shallow water just randomly. So I would very much like some suggestions on somewhat basic graphs that will kind of get me from A to B. I don't really need to be spending all kinds of crazy money on fancy graphs just yet. So right behind the seats is the Livewell. Now, again, Livewell, I think, kind of needs some work. If you can see there, let me zoom in, there's a pretty significant gap, and I don't know if it's, well, actually, I do know. I just answered my own question. So it looks like these screws and rivets hold this up into place. So it looks like I'm just going to have to drill a few new ones and install them, which really shouldn't be that big of an issue. But the aerator works, which is nice. And the bilge pump also works, which is nice. So I'm really excited, because one of the main reasons I wanted a boat like this was to actually tournament fish with, and this will allow me to do so. A little further back, another spot for a seat, which again, I'm only going to have one on here, because I'm only ever really going to be fishing by myself unless I'm on a tournament. In that case, you're kind of moving around all the time anyways, so not a huge deal. So this is the rear nav light that, again, like I said, we were having issues with. The connectors inside look pretty rough. So my first instinct was I need to either clean them or find a way to replace that. But then when I actually looked in here, I don't know if you're going to be able to tell, the connectors in the actual port are also pretty rough. So I'm just going to probably end up replacing most of it anyways. Now finally, all the way back here, kind of the spot that makes most people nervous. The only issue that I really have noticed is it's a mess. For those of you who don't know, I'm a machinist mate in the Navy, and contrary to popular belief, we like things to be simple and straightforward, and right now none of this is either of those things. So gas tank got replaced 4 years ago, which is good because, those can be a pain and expensive. The only actual, what I will call actual issue, is that somewhere in this fuel line, whether it's the bulb or down into the motor, there is an air leak into it. And the only effect it really has is it kind of stutters when you're trying to actually turn it over and get out of idle. But as the guy showed me, you kind of just have to let it warm up. But again, not really too concerned, because these fuel line replacements aren't crazy expensive. So another cool thing is it's already hardwired for a trickle charger, and the trickle charger will charge the cranking battery, the main battery, and the trolling motor battery all at the same time. So if I know I'm not going to use it for, 2 or 3 weeks, then I'll just plug this bad Larry in and it'll be fine. Coming over to the port side, again, you kind of saw everything already, but there is rod storage here. There's rod storage along the gunnel, and that's pretty much it. The only thing I will say is this speaker that they installed kind of blocks this bottom one from having anywhere to go. But again, I'm not really that concerned with it. It's kind of one of those things where I'll have 4 rods there, I'll have rods there, and then if I really need more rod space, I can put them on the side here. So, all right, well, that's the boat that I just bought. Let me know if there's anything you guys would recommend right off the bat, whether it be fixing something that I didn't notice or replacing something that I didn't talk about, or recommendations for stuff I did talk about, all of which will be greatly appreciated. And yeah, I'm beyond excited. So in all reality, the reason I ended up going with a boat like this, specifically an aluminum flat bottom, is utility, right? I understand, I'm not going to hit 65 miles an hour. It's only got a 50 horse on it and it's flat bottom. I know I'm not going to get bass boat speeds out of it. I know I'm not going to get bass boat handling out of it. However, I can use this boat to go fish in tournaments, whether they're in rivers, ponds, lakes, what have you. So I can use that pretty much, especially in South Carolina, from February to November, all for fishing, which is great. And then in the months in between is duck season. And with an aluminum boat, I do not have to worry as much about putting this thing up on a beach and leaving it there while I hunt. If I had a bass boat that was fiberglass or anything but aluminum, then I would be pretty concerned with trying to keep it on a beach or getting it onto the beach to begin with, even if I'm at a boat ramp and there's no dock to hook up to, right? So for me, as cool as a bass boat would be, I wanted more out of it than just bass fishing. And this thing popped up and was in really, really, really good shape. So I bought it. So in addition to all the stuff I've already asked you to put into the comments, the last thing I want you to do is put down how much you would have paid for this boat. I'm not going to tell you unless somebody gets it right, and then I will comment on their comment, hey, you got it right, and then whoever guesses it will get a little, gift from me, as in some fishing lures, because that's kind of what we're about to do. So, sorry if this has been kind of all over the place. I've never really made a video like this before, but yeah, I'm beyond excited for it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for supporting me with this project now, / this opportunity. Hopefully there will be more videos coming up. I would like to do, either once or twice a month, obviously some fishing videos out of it. I'd like to do some videos, of me cleaning it up and fixing stuff and painting, because that's one of the other things, like big projects that I actually want to do is paint it. And I really just want to paint it so that way it's a little bit more camouflaged. I want to go with like either a desert tan or like a light brown, just so that way during hunting season, it's not just a gray box floating in a river. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. This is the start of a lot of cool shit on this channel, and I'm more than grateful and excited to be sharing that with you guys. So make today the best day you can.